Welcome to the Money Script Podcast. This is your host, Johanse Harrison. So happy to be with you again today. We are deep into season 3, and I told all of you when we started season 3, I was coming with some heat, okay? And I reached far, I reached wide, and I wanted to make sure that I was bringing all of you dozens of listeners out there a wide variety of perspectives on how you can begin to think more about your money, about your financial journey, and about growing your financial literacy, because that's what this is about. Of course, I'm a financial planner. I work with, dozens of clients all the time, helping them make better financial decisions in their lives, but I can't work with everyone. So we created this podcast to provide a source of information for you, a place that you can come, a safe space that you can come and you can learn. And maybe you hear something from someone that resonates with you, that inspires you to think about your financial journey a little bit differently. So, of course, whenever we start, I want to talk a little bit about what's, just kind of what's going on. I mean, I know by the time you're listening to this, maybe some of the things that I've mentioned are old news by then. But what I have found is that if history doesn't repeat itself, it does like to rhyme just a little bit. So right now we are going through an interesting time in the markets and just overall in our economy. And the headlines have been all about inflation. Inflation, inflation, inflation. And what is inflation? Inflation is just a rise in cost of living and how goods cost us more today than they may have in the past. And right now, where we sit, we are at record levels of inflation that we haven't seen in 40 years. Now, of course, I don't have to tell you this. You're feeling it. You feel it when you go to the grocery store. You feel it when you fill up your car with gas, especially if you live in California. I hear out there in California, you guys are paying over $5 a gallon for gas, which is just incredible. No wonder everybody wants an electric car. But then California also has more cars than any other state. So it's tough right now for a lot of people. It's also tough, especially for those that are in the lower income brackets, because their wages haven't been keeping up with that inflation. So for those of you that are in that situation, I do encourage you now more than ever, it's very important to sit down and reassess what are your expenses that are needs and what are your expenses that are wants, and how can you make some substitutions so that you can find ways to spend less money and still be able to enjoy your life. Because really that's what we're all here for at the end, is to enjoy this journey that we called life. But today, speaking of the journey of life, I have an incredible guest. I have Dr. Harold Bennett. He is a professor at Morehouse College and the author of Injustice Made Legal, which is an interesting concept because he's actually speaking in that book about critical race theory, which is, of course, been coming up now in sometimes the most strangest ways. But he was ahead of the curve. So now we get to all go and catch up and learn about what he was writing years ago. But I'm excited to have him here today. Again, he is a professor at Morehouse College, actually one of my professors as well. That's how I kind of got him to do this. Like, look, if I get a good grade in your class, I need you to come on my podcast. He was like, I'm gonna come on your podcast anyway. I still got a good grade though. I had to fight for it though. I did have to petition for myself, but I appreciate you, sir. It was a great course. But welcome, Dr. Bennett. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Johanse. Thank you for having me here, and I'm excited about this conversation that we're about to have. I love one of the things that I heard you say, and that is your arms aren't as long as you would like for them to be, and so you like to reach and touch a lot of people, and you see this as a tool to kind of go places where you cannot physically be. And I appreciate that. And I think that's wonderful. And I think you're doing our community a phenomenal service. I'm going to tell you this, my friend, this is what Morehouse is about. This is what we do. What you're doing is the kind of thing that's in the DNA of Morehouse. We make a difference, and we're making a living while we're making a difference.
Yes, indeed. And thank you for being a part of my journey. I really enjoyed your class. The name of the class was, we did call it religion. What was the name of the class? It
was called Introduction
to Religion. Introduction to Religion. I love that you opened the class by having us write about what is religion to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny because what I wrote was what I experienced, where I used this phrase, which you helped me to understand that I wasn't thinking about it right, but I used this phrase of, I don't see myself as religious. I see myself as more spiritual. And then you helped me understand the meaning of the words religion and spirituality. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I am religious. Just I don't necessarily attune to a specific religion.
Right.
I'm more of a interdenominational
Mhm.
individual. I like to pull from all of the different religions, find the good in all of them, and use those in my life. And I'm someone I do pray. When I pray to God. I
Mhm.
don't refer to him necessarily as Allah, Jehovah, but I know those are other names that God has in these other religions. But I really appreciate also the flexibility that you provided in the course, because I made a decision in attending Morehouse that every opportunity that I had to write a paper where I have some free reign, that I would try to connect it with financial literacy. And one of the courses that you, excuse me, assignments that you gave at the end for a final was to create a religion.
Mhm.
And the religion I chose to create was the money religion, or I called
Mhm.
it Monet.
Mhm.
And I remember your comments on it. You asked me in the end that I did not put in the paper is, what is it that the people are seeking? Like, what is the redemption aspect that they're looking
Mhm.
for? And I had kind of left that part out. But after thinking about it afterwards, I was like, oh, okay, I see where I kind of missed that part of what a religion is, and
Mhm.
putting that in there. So now that we're having this conversation, I wanted to share with you that ultimately what people are seeking, the same way people seek the redemption from their sins, or to, go to heaven, or to be one with God, what the people in my religion were seeking is financial independence.
Okay. Okay. Now I got to tell you, I love the way you framed it because you really did nail some of the issues that are very important for appreciating this religious experience. And I'm just excited about where this conversation is going to go. And what's very important is that you have identified a problem, a situation from which we do need some degree of liberation and control. And it has to do with indebtedness and the whole idea of financial, having these bills and just this burden. It can be a burden,
Yes.
but I do think what you're doing is going to help us manage that kind of thing very well.
I want to ask you though, as someone that is a professor of religion,
Mhm.
money tends to have a negative relationship
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. It does. It does. And I'm glad you put it that way. And I think that's a good way to frame it in some respects. And I think it all comes from the fact that you think about religious traditions. Often there is a concern with ensuring that the human being, it's something you said earlier when you, in your introductory kind of comments, you're talking about life and you're talking about finances and you're talking about living, in a certain kind of way. And what's interesting is religious traditions, most of them are about the human being flourishing, the human being being happy, the human being in some kind of way maximizing his or her potential as a person who can think and feel and reason. And what happens is sometimes money gets connected with something that does not speak to that part of the person, that part of the person's our being. Sometimes money is viewed as something that just caters to concerns that just matter to the right here and now. And in that sense, that whole focus of something that doesn't speak to that inner part of a person to help that person be happy and flourish and content, that perhaps those things are bad or somehow or another get a negative kind of rap. And often money gets put under that umbrella or in that category. And persons who seem to be, and I say seem to be concerned with that part of living where that inner part of you does not get nourished, money then becomes something that's viewed as a villain, I would say.
Yes, yes, money is the root of evil. And
Yeah, yeah.
what's the eye of the needle, camel something?
Yeah, yeah, no, no,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
no,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
You're right. It's the money, the whole idea of the love of money being the
Yes.
root of all evil, and it's easier for a rich man to get into heaven than it is for a camel to go through the eye of the needle. And oh no, you're pulling on some interesting kinds of traditions that circulate in our faith communities.
Yeah.
But you're right though. But when I say you're right, there are some who view money as something that's ugly, something that somehow or another reflects. Perhaps someone whose values need to be reshifted or refocused. And we really need to talk about that.
We do. And I also want to bring up a very controversial topic that I deal with clients often,
Mm-hmm.
where they are so, their values, they
Mm-hmm.
place a higher value on their relationship with their church I feel, than their
Mm-hmm.
relationship with their God,
Mm-hmm.
and then also place a higher value on their tithing relationship to their church than balancing their own checkbook. I remember this was probably about a decade ago. I had some clients come to me, and he was the assistant pastor of the church. So
Uh-huh.
he was next
Mm-hmm.
in line to lead the church.
Mm-hmm.
However, their finances were a mess, and
Right.
they had high interest credit cards, high interest loans on their home because, trying to keep up with the Joneses. They wanted to have
Right.
the Escalade and the nice vehicle, and,
Mm-hmm.
wear the nice suits and the nice clothes because they want to portray this image to their congregation. But at the end of the day, I calculated their interest that they were paying on their credit cards and on their second loans on their homes, et cetera. And that interest was greater than the tithing they were giving to the church. And I made a
Wow.
comment that pissed him all the way off. I said, "Your real church is Visa, MasterCard, American Express."
Uh-huh.
I said, "You give them more money than you give your own church."
Uh-huh.
And I said, this ultimately ended our relationship is I told him, I said, "You're on a path to financial ruin.
Mm-hmm.
You are, because you're not gonna go get another job
Right.
because God has given you a calling." I was like, "But even when you make it to the next level, they're not gonna." I know they'll pay because there's some housing, because he knew that once he got to that level, that the church would pay for part of his housing and things of that nature, and that was gonna be his escape out of his financial situation. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
"No, you gotta stop giving money to the church and pay off your credit cards."
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
ended our relationship.
Wow. I think that was a mistake, to be quite honest with you. He should not have ended the relationship.
It's true. I kept up with the family because I still had a working relationship with the daughter, and the church actually wound up splitting,
Yeah.
and he went and tried to create his own and failed at that. I kinda lost track after that, but he was in the extreme situation. But I meet clients like that
Right.
often,
Right.
where they have their own financial house in disarray, but they will not stop their tithing to clean up what they're doing, nor will they change their habits
Right.
so that they can afford to do both. And that's where I've said to them, I was like, "This is where money is evil. It has got you fooled into thinking that you're in control here, and you're not."
No, no, you're not. I'm going to tell you how excited I am about this conversation that you and I are having. I'm actually working on a new class at Morehouse now. I'm designing it. The class is actually called Religion in the Workplace. And when I talk about religion in the workplace, one of the things I'm going to talk about is the idea about religion and what does it mean for how we talk about money? How do we understand contracts? How do we talk about entrepreneurship and that kind of thing? And I'm working on a piece for that right now. But one of the things I want to get out in the open is that one of the takeaways from the class, one of the objectives would be that we understand that money is simply a tool. And that's the argument I'm going to make, that it's simply a tool. And going back to, and I hate to keep walking the conversation back, my friend, but you nailed it in your opening, that I do think that we've got to find ways how money can help us to flourish, how money can help us to live a good life, how money can help us make an impact in our communities. And I think it's very dangerous for us to view money as evil. Money is not the problem. Money is not the issue
No.
at all. The issue is what's happening up here in our head. Money
Yes.
is not the problem. That's not the problem.
Yes, yes. I remember we had the conversation in class when we were talking about the different phrases that we find in spiritual text and religious text that are controversial. And we
Mm-hmm.
talked about the fact that money being the root of evil. And we in the class agreed that we all agreed, no, money isn't the root of
No,
evil. The root is what you want to do with the money.
that's the problem. Now, I would tell you this, my friend. You have identified, or shall I say, you've put in place so many important kinds of issues, especially when it comes to things about financing a church and tithe and offering. And so many of us, and I will say this, and I'm glad this is a podcast. You know, I have a radio show that comes on Wednesdays here in Atlanta. So, you know, I am being taped. I have no problems with this. We need to think about whether or not, if you want to talk about God blessing you with resources, I believe God's first challenge is for you to take care of your home, take care of your life, take care of your children. My friend, when you said earlier that some of us have more of a relationship with God than with a religious organization, we have more relationship with a religious organization more so than God. You are right, because I think what happens sometimes, some of us think the mosque, they think the church, we think the temple, whatever it is, we think that that's God. No, they're not. No, they're not. Those are simple institutions, I would say, and they permit us some kind of space to live out some things. And because of that, even when we think about our money, we need to think about our money as perhaps as something that can help play a role in how we express perhaps our religiousness or our religiosity, or whichever term you want to use. But the money ought to be a window on a lot of other things. And one thing it should be a window on is, how do we care about our homes? How do we take care of our children? All of that. And I honestly believe that there are some of us who have some misplaced values.
Yes.
Some misplaced values. And for some reason, we think those religious organizations should get more attention than our homes and our children. And I'm telling you right now, I would invite those of us who do that kind of thing, think about what you're doing. You better think about what you're doing.
I've challenged some clients, and I did have some that took me up on this and agreed with my concepts of money and their relationship with their church. And when they're looking at their finances, and let's say someone that makes $100,000 and they commit to, I'm going to tithe 10%. Sometimes we have a conversation, is it 10% of the gross or net? And different people have different views on that. It's like, well, it's 10% of what I get. I was like, well, if your taxes go up or down, then that changes that. So past that, I challenged a few clients, and if you're listening, you know who you are, and they took me up on it. I shared with them that money is infinite. There's an unlimited amount of money that you can earn in your lifetime. You change your job, you think of a new idea, you create something, you start a business, win the lottery, you get an inheritance. There's an infinite amount of money. There is no limit on the amount of money that you can earn. But there is a very finite amount of time that you'll spend physically on this earth. So which is more valuable to the church, your money or your time? And I challenged those people that needed to make some changes in their finances. I said, go have a conversation with your pastor and say, hey, pastor, here's the deal. I've got some financial things going on, and I know I've tithed religiously for the last X amount of years. I have to scale back because I got to take care of my home. But what I'm willing to give to you is some of my time, and see how that conversation goes. I had one client had that conversation, and the pastor told him, no, absolutely not. Told him that it would be basically a sin to do that. Okay.
Wow.
They eventually changed religious organizations that they were affiliating with. But I have two others that I'm thinking of right now that they made that commitment, and their church welcomed it.
Sure.
They said, absolutely. Yes, there are so many places you can give your time. We are short. We need your help. Can you go and, help with the homeless? And can you help in the soup kitchen? Can we commit on you to do that? And okay, if you can't afford to tithe right now, that's okay. But we appreciate the time that you're giving us. And one of those individuals, she doesn't even really give financially to her church anymore. She gives her time, which was so much more. And then we did the math a little bit later on how much she gets paid for her job to figure out what her worth is. And we realized that she was giving more than 10% when we calculated what she would be getting paid if she was doing that job for pay. So I was just curious to get your thoughts on
which one, the tithe,
the tithing, the time and money.
Oh, wow. I think, first of all, I appreciate the suggestion and even the conversation about seeing your time as a commodity, because I agree. That's the most precious thing we have. I think you framed it correctly by saying that money could be, the access to money, the potential, that kind of thing is limitless. But you're right. There's an amount of time that's not going to change. That's pretty much set. But here's the thing. I love the idea of inviting people to consider sharing time with a religious organization, something to help and to work. Because I do think that those are ways that you can demonstrate your commitment to whatever the cause is. Because I am unsure if just paying money means you committed. Sometimes paying money is what you do when you're not committed. I mean, think about it.
Preach. Preach.
Yeah, when you really don't care about something, sometimes what you do, you just give somebody some money so they leave you alone.
So they go away. Yep, that's exactly what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
If you really want to get rid of a friend, loan them some money.
Loan them some money, yeah. Money can be one of the things you can use to get rid of some people. I'm being honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
So don't assume that because money is there, that my heart is there. No, not at all. But time is a better indicator of what's really important to you.
Mm.
It is. Now, in terms of the tithe, now I'm going to tell you a story, but this is something I'll always remember. I did my PhD at Vanderbilt, and I remember I was a student assistant to a rabbi. We were learning Aramaic. And so what I did one Sabbath, one Shabbat, I went to the temple with him. That's what I did. So we're in Nashville. I went to the temple service, and I was there one Sabbath. They were doing a bar mitzvah. So I was there. Little fella got up and read from Torah and whatnot. So I'm sitting there. I'm going in my pocket, getting ready for the offering. You know, being in the black church, we're going to raise the offering, right? So I'm sitting here, getting my money out, and I'm ready to give. And I noticed there was no offering raised in the service. And after service, the rabbi, we went downstairs, unrolled some Hebrew scrolls and all this kind of stuff. And I asked him, I said, listen, I've had a great time today. I've learned some things. I want to leave some money. He stopped me. He said, no. We don't collect money on the Sabbath. I said, what do you mean? And he went into this long discussion about how handling and collecting money on the Sabbath is something you just don't do. And I asked him, I said, well, I looked at the structure. I looked at what they did. I said, this thing is massive. How do y'all do this? And he said to me that what they do, they have a system at that temple where at a certain point in the year, each member brings a percentage of their income and they help support the work that's there, but they don't raise money on the Sabbath. So I said that to say this. Then I got to talk to him about how do you understand this tithe and how do they give and whatnot. And he said they just basically practice percentage giving. But they didn't set it at 10, but it was just percentage giving. All right, I say that to say this. When we think about tithing, there are a couple of things to consider. And I even talk a little bit about this in my book, Injustice Made Legal. One of the things we have to consider is when you're talking about tithing, do you want to talk about a literal 10%? Or do you want to see that piece as something that's just talking about it's important to share your resources? You just need to be faithful after you can set an amount. It doesn't have to be 10%. You need to practice some kind of regular giving. That's the thing to consider. And there's so many reasons you need to work through all of that, because let me just give you a couple of those. On the one hand, if you opt with that argument that it means a literal 10%, you're going to argue then, or you're saying that you need to read those laws literally. Well, if you want to do that, then my question would be, then do you read all the other laws where those tithing laws show up literally? Or do you suspend the literal stuff around all of them? And then when you get to the tithe law, it becomes a literal 10%. That's something you need to think about. Number two, what you might want to think about is that those tithe laws say different things in the Hebrew Bible. And let me show you what I mean. There are tithe laws that say tithing regulations in the Hebrew Bible are very different. For example, you take the ones in Malachi. The ones in Malachi are going to say things like you bring the tithe into the storehouse. That's probably the one everybody hears the most about. All right. And then you look at the tithing regulations over in Leviticus and maybe probably Numbers, but in those priestly regulations, the tithe go to the priesthood. You look at the tithing regulations in Deuteronomy, you keep your tithe.
Oh, I need to go read Deuteronomy then.
Deuteronomy 14 and Deuteronomy 26. The tithe, you keep it. In fact, the tithing regulations say you bring your tithe, you get to the holy place, you thank God for them, and then you and your family enjoy them. That's what it says.
Wow. Yeah, those pages are stuck together.
And then if you really want to push it, now here's where it gets even more interesting. If you read in 1 Samuel chapter 8, there's a whole piece there about tithe, but at that point, the tithe goes to the federal government. In other words,
yes,
the monarch.
Yes. I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Now that right there creates a whole new situation about, well, wait a minute then, if the passage in 1 Samuel is the case, and if I'm already paying tax, why do I need to pay tithe? I'm already paying.
Our money says, "In God we trust."
That's what I'm saying. So those things need to be taken into some serious consideration when you want to talk about reading tithe literally, because you got to You got so many issues that need to be sorted out. I'm telling you that now. And I would invite any of your listeners, listen, what you should do, I'm going to leave my email so you can email me. I want you to call me because I love the questions. I love them. And I love to talk about these tithe regulations. I love to talk about giving because that's what's interesting. In Islam teaches giving, but it's not 10% of what you do. It's like 2% or something. And then you want to make it your effort to share it with people who are somewhat indigent. You just don't give money to rich folk.
Exactly.
You know?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You want to share with people who are really, really poor. You want to do that kind of thing. And like the rabbi shared with me, they bring a percentage of their income. And I'm like, wow, they're working with this whole idea of tithing. And they see it as principle, as percentage given. But he didn't tell me they said it at 10, that they said that there was just a percentage thing. So I would say that anybody that wants to give, I would say it's a good thing to you to figure out, first of all, what is you want to give your time? I think it's excellent. If you want to share your resources, then figure out just what you want to do, but don't neglect your home. Yeah. Don't neglect your health care and all those kinds of things. I don't think you should do that. I think that's being irresponsible.
It is. I agree. And thank you. Oh my goodness. I told y'all we were coming with some heat.
Oh man.
There's probably a few of you that had to just turn this off. Hopefully you turned it back on. Okay. I want you to listen. Make sure you listen through the whole thing. If it made you uncomfortable, we are talking to you, and that's okay. Because this is part of financial literacy. We too often we just take what we received as children, whether it was from our parents, grandparents, or from the church or any other organization, and we take it as facts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's not always facts. It's sometimes someone's opinion. It's Samuel's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
I don't have a problem with that. I just want our audience, even if they want to identify as being Christian, however you want to identify, just understand that finances and money, that they're here to help us. I would say, see them as a tool, as a vehicle to help us live better lives, as Johanse has been saying here. I think that's the thing we need to consider. And I'm telling you, my friend, I really like what you said earlier about how certain groups view money as evil. And we've got to change our lens. We've got to get us a new set of glasses and see it differently. Because I will tell you right now, there is very little in life you can do without money.
Oh, yeah.
We've got to understand that it's something that's there to help bring about some other kinds of things. I'm just convinced that that's the case.
Money, I say it often, money is an option multiplier.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. It multiplies the options that you have for the lifestyle that you want to live. Mm-hmm. And the more money you have, the more options you have. And if you want to give it away, great. More power to you. Please do. Mm-hmm. If you want to save it all and for yourself and your family, then by all means, please do. But it is an option multiplier. We're going to wrap up here because I know that you've got courses to teach. I have to ask, as we do on every one of our episodes, tell us, what is your first memory of money?
You would ask me that right when we're about to run out of time. Let me tell you this. I'm a project kid, straight out of the projects. And my first memories of money, I'm about to tell my age now. There was a store where apartments where the projects were, and even by my grandmother's house, they used to have these 2 for a penny cookies. 2 for a penny.
Oh yeah, you are telling your age on that. Because they were at least 5 cents by the time I got there. But okay.
Oh no, dog. And I can remember getting a penny, 2 pennies, 3 pennies. And I'm like, oh man, look at all these cookies I'm going to get. And I would be just, make a beeline to the store. And so my first memory of money is getting a penny or two. So I could go to the store and buy me some cookies, and seeing that penny and seeing and what it could bring. So I was always looking around to see what was 2 for a penny. I was always doing that because I knew I would get a penny somewhere, but I knew that penny had some value, and I was always trying to find a way to stretch that penny as far as I could. Oh man, yeah.
You did grow up in the project. That was the hood. You were trying to stretch a penny.
And man, let me tell you, bro. Let me tell you. And I think that's part of my very first memory. I was always conscious of money and how little of it I actually had, and trying to figure out what to do with the funds that I had.
Indeed. And that actually ties back to the opening that we talked about at the top of our show is how so many of us here in America and probably other parts of the world, you're going to have your shot at this too. But I know we have listeners all over in some of the countries where you're listening to this. You've dealt with this in much worse ways in the US and that idea of inflation, of cost
Right.
of living increasing. And here in US, they said the overall number was 7.5%, but I call bullshit on that because
Right.
if you shopped at the Dollar General store, everything in Dollar General went from a dollar to $1.25.
Stop right there. I wish my wife was listening. I picked her up from work one day and she said, you know what? That dollar store is no longer a dollar store. I said, what's wrong, baby? She said, do you not know everything in there is $1.25 now?
Mhm.
And she was just talking about this 2 weeks ago. And she was going in, man.
As she should, because think about this, Dr. Bennett. Now, you and your wife have some financial resources. You're not stretching
Uh-huh.
pennies anymore.
Right.
But imagine the person where the primary place they shop is the Dollar General store.
My wife was livid. And I'm going to tell her what you said today because she spent about 2 weeks. I mean, she is outraged. She really is.
She
She's
should be. And again, for those of us that have resources, we handle it. My sister, she made the joke one day. She said, last week I went to Dollar General with $10, walked out with 10 items. This week I went in with $10 and walked out with 7. Explain this to me.
Wow.
But for
Wow.
people that's the primary place where they shop
Right.
for their home resources, they
Right.
did not get a 25% raise.
Right. Right.
They were lucky if they got 3 or 4. And
Yeah.
it's not over. Some people want to blame it on our current president, and it's not his fault.
Mhm.
Could he be a part of the solution? Yes, but the really only solution that the government has
Mhm.
is to try to give us more money.
Mhm.
Giving us more money just causes prices to go up even more.
How can I say this without maybe getting you in trouble?
You get me in trouble. It's fine.
Okay, well, I'm gonna get you in some trouble right now. I kind of have some concerns about us thinking that the government just supposed to just keep on giving us money.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just don't think that's the answer to a lot of problems. I just, and I know some of your listeners might differ with me on that, but I kind of got some concerns about that, and I don't think that's the best strategy. I really don't.
The effect of all of the money that's been pumped into our system, whether it was given to those of us that are the poorest or given to
Mhm.
those of us that already had enough resources and they said, here's
Mhm.
some more, the effect of that is inflation.
Sure.
It helps increase the need for goods and services prices to go up. Now, we also have the shortages that we dealt with in supply chain, and that's part of it as well. And inflation, actually, the government's job is to create inflation. That's what they're trying to
Mhm.
do. They don't want deflation. They don't want stagflation. That means we're all making less money over time, or the cost of goods and
Mhm.
services are going down. They're trying to combat that. And one could say that they probably overcorrected a little bit, but here we are. We're stuck with the
Mhm.
decisions that were made from the previous administrations and the administration that we're in today. But as a people, as citizens of this global economy and the local economy, a 25% increase on a pack of paper plates will ruin some people financially. It will. It is the difference of having, 7 meals a week versus 5.
Right.
Both Pepsi and Coca-Cola increased their prices last winter.
Mhm.
Both of them did. Okay. So the prices of everything is going up and wages are not. So we as a people, we have to start getting creative. Like we talked about earlier, money is infinite, time is not.
Time is not.
We have to start to reassess how we spend our time and how we invest our time to see if we can create some more ways to create some money because there's plenty of it out there. Everyone, there is plenty of it out there. If you have a skill that you are not currently utilizing in your current job, look for ways to use some of the other 128 hours that you're not giving your job or 100 hours that you're not giving your job and that you're not sleeping, that you can take those skills and try to create some more money for yourself, whether it's cutting your neighbor's grass or helping an older person in your neighborhood, maybe move some furniture around, whatever it is. There are so many things that we can do to generate more income because unfortunately you're going to need it. And we can't We don't even want to, as Dr. Bennett was saying, you don't want to count on the government to give it to you.
Mm.
You just don't. So we could keep going, but I try to keep these things at under 45, and we're clocking in at about 30 and some change. But Dr. Bennett, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Now, you did promise that you would give your email address.
I sure did.
Listeners, please, if you want to have a deeper conversation about this, and if you found that we were talking to you, if you were torn with managing your house and your relationship with your church and your relationship with God, your God, Dr. Bennett's open to have a conversation with you, help you think through it. And I am too. You know where to find me. Dr. Bennett, how can we find you?
You can find me in a couple of places. Here's what you want to do. Wednesday afternoons on WAEC 860 AM here in Atlanta. My radio show is on Wednesday afternoons. It's called Pentecost for Life. Pentecost for Life. What that piece does, it's a really interesting conversation, talk about religious text issues, and we're very interested in talking about how these things affect our community. But it's Wednesday afternoons, Love 860. It comes on at 2:30. 2:30. You can get me there. The second thing you can do, you can actually visit my website. And my website is Pentecost for Life, and it's the 4life.com. And you can actually go there and you can visit us. The Pentecost for Life phone number is 404-438-3561. 404-438-3561. My email, it's my initials, H, V as in Victor, B as in Bennett, at Pentecost, PENTECOST, the number 4life.com. That's HVB at Pentecost 4life.com. Phone number is 404-438-3561. You can actually visit the website, which says the same thing. You can actually go to my Facebook page also, which is Pentecost FOR Life. I look forward to the conversations. I don't care where you're calling me from. I have listeners in Ghana, listeners in North Carolina, Florida, Indiana. Call me. I love your questions. We can talk about them.
Let's talk about them. Thank you again, Dr. Bennett. I appreciate you. And listeners, we're going to wrap up season 3 here shortly. I'm still coming with some heat. I am. My intention in season 3 is to get you emotional, whether it's excitement, whether it's frustration. I want you to say, no, he didn't. I want you to throw your phone like, oh, no, I can't do this right now. That's what I want. Okay. I need to evoke this emotion out of all of you so you start taking some action, because we are in a much different economy than the one that I remember. Now, by the way, as far as now, Dr. Bennett knows, because he was stretching pennies, but we had 7, 8, 9, 10% inflation in the 80s. Okay. I was still 2-3 years old. I was stretching nickels. I didn't know the difference yet. And I didn't know that. My parents, I've told this story on the show before, my parents celebrated when they purchased their first home in 1983 and it had a 16% interest rate. They popped a bottle of champagne and celebrated because 16% was good in 1983. Okay. I don't know if we will be there again, but the government is starting to raise interest rates. So gone will be the days of getting a 2%, 3% interest rate on your house. That means your credit card interest rates are going up. That means your auto loan interest rates are going up. The cost of borrowing is going up. Okay. So if you don't start doing things a little bit differently, you're going to be in a world of financial hurt. And that's not what I want for you. So again, thank you everybody for listening. We will catch you next time on the Money Script Podcast. Y'all be safe, have fun, and give some money to somebody. Whether it's 10%, 3%, pick a number. Just maybe give a little bit away, because I do believe in the fact that you'll be blessed and multiplied.
Thanks for joining us on the Money Script Podcast. Be sure to check out our other episodes, subscribe, follow, and give us 5 stars. Continue to send your financial questions on Twitter or Instagram at The Money Script. Go to moneyscriptwealth.com and schedule your complimentary consultation to discuss your specific goals and concerns. Financial advisory and investment management services are offered by Money Script Wealth Management PLLC, a registered investment advisory firm registered in the state of Texas and California and other states where exempt. The Money Script LLC and the Money Script Wealth Management PLLC and guests of the episode may have interest in the investments mentioned today. The opinions and views are expressed here are for informational purposes only. This material is educational in nature and should not be deemed as a solicitation for any specific product or service. All investments involve risk and a significant loss of principal. The Money Script nor Money Script Wealth Management offer tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney for specific advice about your situation. Until next time.